there is a tendency that emotions are allowed to be expressed among the lower level, the low power people. But there's some kind of implicit expectation that if you aspire to climb to the top, that you have to be unemotional, and emotion is still a negative bias.
Welcome to the Dell podcast. So, conventional wisdom tells us to suppress our emotions when making strategic choices. But Quy Huy, professor of strategy at INSEAD, thinks that's a mistake. For him, emotions, our own and other people's, are fundamental in competent leadership. I sat down with Quy to discuss emotions, their role in change management, and also why leaders struggle to connect on an emotional level. My name is Saku Mantere, and I'm your host today. All right. Today I'm speaking to Quy Huy, professor of strategy at INSEAD, an old friend. So, you're probably the top person in the world when we talk about emotions and organizational change. So that's how I thought of your work, broadly speaking. So, you've been fascinated with emotions for decades now. Do you remember when you first became fascinated with emotions as a topic of study?
It was a psychodynamics course. These guys under political science. Mm-hmm. So we learned about the dysfunctional behaviors of people like Saddam Hussein, Edgar Hoover, and then that piqued my attention in the sense that why are those psychodynamics people always focusing on the negative? Psychodynamic literature, they always see it's like a rear view mirror. They can explain almost everything backward, and using Freudian concepts. Right, it's always about anxiety of something. So I thought there must be something in life more than anxiety. Why are we not focusing on positive emotions? And then why are we focusing only on a person rather than an organization or a structure?
When we think about the whole idea of strategy as being the highest form of executive thought, that when you think strategically, then you're sort of thinking the most important things and you're doing the most careful analysis, and actually you're being the most rational. It comes from strategos, general in Greek, and strategy, before it was applied in management, it was used in games, mathematical game theory, which is about rational interaction between people, rational decision making, and then it was also in war, where sort of there's a lot of emotion in war, but sort of, you win a war through analytical thinking, I suppose, in when you're thinking strategically. So it's not really that surprising that we're kind of trying to rule out emotions from strategy.
And I use the metaphor of macho man, they always try to be tough, or the metaphor of the Viking, always very strong, unemotional, focused on task and rationality execution. So so when I saw them in action with their employees or with investors, that's what the facade that they're displaying, they were displaying. But when I interviewed them, senior executives, I'm talking C-level, I was astounded initially by some of them just cracking in tears in front of me. At first, I didn't know what to do because it kind of contrasted with my image that people at the top are very tough, rational, cool, unemotional. And I was just at a loss in the beginning when there's cracking up in tears. I saw a very private life of senior executives carrying out their duties and carrying out change, especially.
It was almost like strategic management was the embodiment of toxic masculinity at that point. That you're supposed to isolate yourself. You're supposed to bear the burden. On the other hand, it's so touching that somebody actually asked them about their emotions, and then there's this outpour of feeling that comes.
And that is the insight that I was being able to put into practice in my teaching for the subsequent 25 years, when I have been teaching all C-level from all over the world, from the top organizations, I kind of discovered that much of the world of corporation is still being run on the same level of excluding emotion as it was 25 years ago, which is we're making very slow progress on that dimension.
Quy, what do you say to an executive that comes to you and says that, why are you teaching me about emotion? Why is this important? What do you say to them?
So, first of all, most executives came with the realization, as I did in my career, and in their motivation, they said, we have been trying everything that is rational and it's possible. We have structures, we have KPI, we have processes, we have the best consulting firms, which you know whom I'm talking about, you know. Best consulting firms, we are paying them very big money. They give us humongous binders and PowerPoints, you know, full of numbers and flow charts. 4 years later, it's still going nowhere. We are facing a very hidden guerrilla warfare. That's my term, you know, in the organization. It's going from everywhere. But now we realize something is going on, but we cannot put our fingers on it.
Emotions were regarded largely through the lens of resistance.
Okay, so emotions always viewed as organizationally and from a strategy perspective, highly undesirable. So the people who have emotions are by and large perceived as irrational. They are the sabotagers. You know, they are just destroying the organization. They are selfish. So the implication of how can we go in and hunt them?
So Quy, when an executive comes to you and says that why is it I should understand emotions, your first line of answering them is to say that you have to understand emotions in order to understand why people resist strategy, why they resist strategic change.
Yeah, exactly. Executives tend to view emotions rather from a highly idiosyncratic, personal perspective. Everybody has their own selfishness and personal biases. And the first teaching point, I want to make them aware that those emotions are fairly common and fairly shared, and they're collective, and not personal. In organization, in society, it's not personal emotions that drive actions, but it is collective emotions that drive collective action. If we all feel skeptical or angry or frustrated by change, and I know that you feel the same way. Now we have the same goal, and is to attack the change, the proposed change, right? Because now we have the shared goal, and knowing that the other people, and there are a lot of people, not just you, sharing the same emotion about the same thing, emboldens you into getting to action, collective action, right? And that's the collective action that drives the results of strategic change. Not any personal emotion per se, not any personal action per se.
Okay, so let's then talk about the positive emotions. Just biologically, humans are collaborative creatures. We have family dynamics, we have clan dynamics, where sort of we're also expecting each other to help and to comfort us and give us hope. And that's another side of leadership. So, how do you approach that?
Again, that could be explained by evolutionary theory. And I think Darwin and other people have helped us shed insights quite a bit. Because people and even animals, just human beings, but that's that, most animals also behave in the same way. Millions of years of evolution have taught them that they survive better and can reproduce babies better if they work in groups, in solidarities. Because by working in groups, it is the group will protect the self-interest. That's what the herd instinct. That's how they survive against wolves, caribou against wolves. So the animals come slowly to realize that working in pairs or even in larger teams would help increase their sense of survival. They could protect themselves. They could take turns to keep watch, like the monkeys, to keep watch against the tiger or the snakes, and so they can the division of labor that is possible to do in teams. But groups could only work together if there is the feeling of attachment and love. Otherwise, there is no trust. Why would people work together? If its foundation is liking first, liking is the first one, and then over time it can become to love, but love into making compromises that you are good on something and not good on something else, and that leads to division of labor. And the whole idea of division of labor allows organization today to exist.
Parenting, I guess, is another. So we can think of the strategist, the executive, as a military leader that sends people to die, I suppose, and sort of hunts down the resistors or sort of disciplines them. But we can also think of them as a parent. I guess there's a great deal of research, psychodynamic research, that actually sort of adult workers, often professionals, they expect this kind of parenting type of behavior. So I guess that's also one dynamic to be aware of. That's in you were talking about love earlier. So parental love, I guess, is our first model of what love is.
Human beings living in groups yearn for a sense of safety and security. Therefore, trust. Right? So that's what they expect in their leaders. A sense of authenticity, respect, that they can trust. That some ideal values or behaviors that are rare but highly valuable, using the strategy terms, because any entities that is valuable or rare is highly in demand. So I think that's what most people, in the simplest term, hope to get from their leaders.
I'm reminded of a line that the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson said to the talk show host Stephen Colbert. They were talking about astronomy, and Neil deGrasse Tyson said that, "Look, Stephen, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you." And I think that was pretty great. That the universe really doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So we can try to figure out the laws, but sort of it's not predictable. And our, sense of safety, what you were talking about, is built on this notion that I'm going to give sense to what all this means. And this is what we expect from our leaders, from our politicians and so on. And that's a gift that can be used to very toxic purposes, as we know from dictators, that they project the world that seems very sensible to those who want to hear that message.
Exactly. So some leaders are even resorting to military aggression as the excuse that we are doing that so that our nation be more secure, isn't it? We attack and kill the people so that our nation will become more secure afterwards. You see all examples like that across the world.
It's often frustrating with leadership that we confuse ethics with leadership, and that there's very effective leadership that's profoundly unethical, that like the dictators. But I still am compelled to ask you about how do you feel about the ethical implications of emotions in leadership?
When I started to publish my emotional capability paper, showing that how organizations can use a series of positive emotions in order to convince people to rally to radical change in organizations. One or two reviewers objected to my paper's idea there, and the argument was that you as an author is suggesting a very dangerous weapon to organizations, because it's like the nuclear bomb, that you're telling everybody to bomb a nuclear bomb, because emotions is the last private realm that human beings can control. And what you are giving to organizations is a tool to manipulate emotions so that you can do any radical change that the leaders propose. I think the metaphor kind of took me aback, because I didn't know that my paper would be considered as such.
Yeah, I think we could also kind of answer to that reviewer who was giving you that critique, is it somehow better to be ignorant on how you influence people? Is it somehow because, you do influence them anyway. Is it better? It's a little bit like sort of educating somebody in the arts or music, that is it better that you're given knowledge about sort of if you have a natural talent? Because arguably to survive as a leader, you probably have a lot of natural talent for engaging with people. So is it better that you don't know what you're doing? So are you going to be more ethical, or so in that sense, I think that's the counter question. Yeah. Does knowledge always lead to manipulation? Why would we assume that?
By giving the technology to everybody, everyone now would have the knowledge to assess on their own that what their leaders doing or their nations doing, they are playing with the emotions, or they are playing, or they are influencing the emotions. Now, it's up to you to decide to accept it or not, because now you can see their game. You can see the behaviors. It's up to you to decide whether what they're doing is acceptable to you or not. Some people masking it with the word inspiring. I'm not manipulating you, I'm inspiring you. I think the objective term is that I am to say something or do something to change the way you feel about something, about me, about something else. Now, the word inspiring or manipulating are very judgmental. Okay, so the point is that by giving the same knowledge to everybody, that would equalize the battlefield.
To me, it seems that quite a lot has changed since you started studying this stuff in the early 90s. Could you say a couple of things about the change that you've seen or witnessed during all this time?
I think now there is more changes that espouse at the surface. They are more politically correct. And it's also true that the younger generation, I'm talking about 30 years old, around and below, much more, let's say, much more in tune with emotions, and that leads to search for meaning at work, search for work-life balance. So all these phenomena is it could be related to people realizing that their feelings at work and at home are important, and then how do you feel about work? Work is not just a means for people to make a living. It's more than just helping you to pay your mortgage. That is the realization. However, from my mainly consulting work with senior executives, the change is very slow at the top, in the sense that people talk about it because it's politically correct to say so. But their behaviors among the top levels, I'm talking about M-1, M-2, to a large extent are still very macho and suppressing emotions. There is a tendency that emotions are allowed to be expressed among the lower level, the low power people. But there's some kind of implicit expectation that if you aspire to climb to the top or close to the top, that you have to be unemotional, and emotion is still a negative bias. I also had the opportunity to coach many women aspiring to become executives. As you know, most women today, the majority are at best at the middle management rank. By middle managers, I said N-2 and below. N-2 and below are middle managers, right? With time, they will become, of course, you have to wait for time to do things, and fairly soon, women will be the top. The fact that we have more women at the top does not mean that emotions will be accepted. Why? Because I cannot say how many people, but women who get at the top, some of them have become more macho than men themselves. Meaning that now they are, to prove themselves, they have to show that they're more tough than men.
So it seems to me, Quy, that there's still a lot of work to be done. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for joining us on the Dell podcast. And that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you felt emotionally touched by this episode or had some other kind of reaction, please consider subscribing and telling a friend. Delve is the thought leadership platform of the Desautels Faculty of Management here at McGill University. This episode was mixed by Eric Dicaire and the music was done by me, Saku Mantere.